I was standing in the hallway outside conference room B when Diane said it, her voice flat, final. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. My hands were full of project binders. I'm Ariana Wells. I'm 34 years old, and at the time this happened, I was the senior systems architect at Northstar Technologies. I'd been there for 6 years. I had a daughter, Mia, who was 8. Her school pickup was at 3:15 every day, and I organized my entire life around making sure I was there. Northstar Technologies built enterprise resource planning software for mid-sized manufacturers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work, and the clients trusted us because we delivered. My job was to design the technical architecture for each implementation. Essentially, I figured out how to make our software fit into the messy reality of each client's existing systems. It required patience, technical depth, and the ability to translate between what clients said they wanted and what they actually needed. Diane Fletcher had been my supervisor for 2 years. She'd come from outside the company, brought in during a restructuring. She had an MBA from a good school and spoke confidently in meetings, but she didn't have a technical background. That wasn't necessarily a problem. Good managers don't always need to be technical, but Diane had a habit of making decisions without understanding their implications. From the beginning, there were small moments that felt off. She'd introduce me to clients as one of our architects even though I was the most senior one on staff. She'd schedule meetings during times she knew I had school commitments, then act surprised when I had to leave. Once, after I'd spent 3 weeks solving a particularly complex integration problem, she thanked the team in an email but somehow left my name out entirely. I told myself these were oversights. Everyone makes mistakes. I needed this job. The Carmichael manufacturing project was supposed to be my signature achievement. It was our largest client in years, a $100 million company that wanted to completely overhaul their operations software. I'd been working on the proposal for 4 months. I'd traveled to their facility in Ohio twice on my own time, staying overnight and missing Mia's ballet recital once, just to understand their production flow. I'd mapped every system they used, identified every integration point, built a phased implementation plan that would let them maintain operations throughout the transition. When we won the contract, Diane called me into her office. "Great work on the proposal," she said. "Really solid." "Thank you," I said. "I'm excited to get started on implementation. I've already drafted the technical specifications for Phase 1. About that." She leaned back in her chair. "I'm thinking we should bring someone else in to lead the implementation." I felt something drop in my chest. "Someone else?" "Kyle Brennan. He just joined us last month. Came from a consulting firm. I think his style might be a better fit for a client of this size." Kyle Brennan was 27 years old. He had good credentials, I'll give him that, but he'd been at Northstar for exactly 4 weeks. He hadn't worked on the proposal. He'd never met the Carmichael team. He didn't know their systems or their constraints or the promises we'd made. "Diane, I've been working on this for months. I know every detail of their operation. Bringing someone new in now. He's more flexible than you," she said. The way she said it made it clear the decision was already made. "You're excellent at the planning stage, Ariana, but implementation requires someone who can be on-site frequently, someone without scheduling constraints." Scheduling constraints. That was how she referred to the fact that I picked up my daughter from school. "I can be on-site," I said. "I've already arranged coverage for." "It's decided." She smiled, the kind of smile that's meant to end a conversation. "You'll transition everything to Kyle this week. I'm sure you'll support him fully." I walked back to my desk. My hands were shaking slightly. I sat down and stared at my computer screen without seeing it. That afternoon, I began the handoff. I spent 3 hours walking Kyle through the documentation I'd created. He took notes, asked reasonable questions, nodded in the right places. He seemed competent enough. Maybe Diane was right. Maybe I was being territorial. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched from the sidelines. Kyle took meetings I'd normally lead. He flew to Ohio for on-site work. Diane praised his fresh energy in a team meeting. I stayed in the office, working on smaller projects, picking up Mia on time every day, trying to convince myself this was fine. Then things started to go wrong. Small things at first. The Carmichael team had questions about data migration timelines, and Kyle gave them answers that contradicted what I'd promised in the proposal. When one of their engineers pushed back, Kyle apparently got defensive, and the engineer called our account manager directly to complain. The account manager came to me, confused, asking why the timeline had changed. I explained that it hadn't, or shouldn't have, and spent 2 hours fixing the misunderstanding. Then Kyle ran into problems with the integration architecture. Carmichael used a legacy inventory system that required a specific type of API bridge, something I'd designed and documented extensively. Kyle tried to implement a more modern approach that simply didn't work with their infrastructure. He spent a week troubleshooting before admitting he was stuck. Diane asked me to help Kyle out. I did. I spent late nights fixing the integration design, then handed it back to him to present as his own work. That was the deal, implicitly. I was support staff now. I missed Mia's parent-teacher conference because I was fixing Kyle's mistakes. My ex-husband, Chris, took her instead. He texted me later. Mia asked where you were. I told her you were working. She said you're always working now. That hurt more than anything Diane had said. The project limped forward. 3 weeks in, we were behind schedule and the client was frustrated. Diane scheduled a project review meeting. Kyle presented. When asked about specific technical decisions, he stumbled, using buzzwords without substance. I sat in the back of the room, watching Diane's expression shift from confident to concerned. After the meeting, she pulled me aside. The Carmichael project needs more oversight, she said. I need you to stay more involved. I offered to lead it from the beginning, I said quietly. Well, we need to work with what we have now. She said it like the situation had nothing to do with her decisions. Just keep Kyle on track, okay? Do whatever it takes. Do whatever it takes. That phrase sat in my mind all evening. That night, after putting Mia to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea I didn't drink. I thought about the 4 months I'd spent building the Carmichael proposal. I thought about the ballet recital I'd missed. I thought about the parent-teacher conference. I thought about Diane saying scheduling constraints like my daughter was an inconvenience rather than the most important person in my world. And I thought about something else. When I'd been working on the Carmichael proposal, I'd done something I always do with major clients. I'd built relationships beyond the primary contact. Their director of operations, Helen Ortega, and I had spent hours on the phone discussing their needs. She'd appreciated my thoroughness, my patience, the way I actually listened to what their team needed rather than trying to sell them something prepackaged. Before we'd even won the contract, she'd told me, if we do this, I want you leading it. You understand us. We'd stayed in touch. After the contract was signed, I'd sent her a brief email letting her know there would be some team adjustments, but assuring her the quality wouldn't change. She'd replied with concern, "You're not staying on the project?" I downplayed it professionally, but I could tell she wasn't happy. Now, sitting at my kitchen table, I pulled up my email and found Helen's message. I read it again. Then I thought about the contract terms I negotiated, specifically, the clause that gave Carmichael the right to request specific personnel for key roles, a clause they'd asked for and I'd agreed to because I'd assumed I would be that personnel. I opened my laptop and started typing an email. Not to Helen. Not yet. First, to an old colleague named Richard Kemp, who'd left Northstar 2 years ago to start his own consulting firm. He'd tried to recruit me twice. I'd always said no because of stability, because of Mia, because change felt risky. I asked if his offer was still open. He replied within an hour, "Absolutely. Let's talk." The next morning, I had a call with Richard. His firm was smaller than Northstar but growing. He needed senior architects. He offered me a position with better pay, fully remote work, and genuine flexibility. "I know you have a daughter," he said. "I have 2 kids myself. I built this company to have the life I wanted. I want my team to have that too." I told him I needed a few days to think about it. He said to take the time I needed. Then I called Helen Ortega. "Helen, it's Ariana Wells from Northstar. Do you have a few minutes?" "Ariana. I was actually going to call you this week. We've been having some communication issues with Kyle. Nice guy, but he doesn't seem to have the depth of knowledge you do." "That's actually what I wanted to discuss," I said carefully. "I'm concerned about the project's direction. You know I did all the original architecture and planning." "I do know that. Her voice had an edge. Which is why I was surprised when Diane told us she wouldn't be leading implementation. No offense to Kyle, but you're the one who understood our needs. I appreciate that. Helen, I need to be direct with you. I'm considering leaving Northstar for another opportunity. But before I make that decision, I want to make sure this project is in good hands. And right now, I'm not confident it is. There was a pause. Then, what are you suggesting? The contract you signed includes a provision allowing you to request specific project personnel. If you were to formally request that I lead the implementation, Northstar would be contractually obligated to assign me. Or, if I'm no longer with Northstar, to negotiate alternative arrangements. Another pause, longer this time. And if you're no longer with Northstar? Then you'd have grounds to request either my involvement as an external consultant, or to renegotiate the contract terms. Given the current delays and communication problems, you'd have a strong case for either option. I see. Helen's voice was thoughtful now. Ariana, off the record, are you planning to leave? I'm considering it. I've been offered a position at a smaller firm where I'd have more autonomy and better work-life balance. But I don't want to leave you in a difficult position. What if, Helen said slowly, we officially requested you to lead this project, and when Northstar pushes back, and I assume they will, we insist on you specifically, even if it means bringing you in as an outside consultant through your new firm. My heart was beating faster now. That would be one approach. Let me talk to our executive team. I'll call you back today. She called back 3 hours later. We're officially submitting a written request to Northstar that you be assigned as lead architect on our project, per Section 12 of our contract. We're citing the recent communication breakdowns and timeline delays as justification. If they refuse, we're prepared to escalate. Thank you, Helen. Thank you. You're the professional we want to work with. We'll make sure that happens. I hung up and sat very still for a moment. Then I called Richard Kemp. I'm ready to accept your offer, I said. But I need one specific arrangement. There's a client situation I need to handle carefully. Tell me what you need. I explained the Carmichael situation. Richard listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, so Northstar is about to lose their biggest project because they sidelined their best architect. And you want to come here, bring the client relationship with you, and do the work right. That's the short version, yes. He laughed. Ariana, that's exactly the kind of integrity and strategic thinking I want on my team. Let's make it happen. I'll draw up your contract today, and we'll prepare a proposal for Carmichael to contract directly with us if Northstar can't fulfill their personnel request. One more thing, I said. I want to give Northstar 2 weeks' notice. Professional, clean, no burning bridges. Of course. That's how we do things here. I drafted my resignation letter that evening. It was brief and polite. I thanked Northstar for the opportunities I'd had, mentioned my transition to Richard Kemp Consulting, and offered to ensure a smooth handoff of all current projects. I said nothing about Diane, nothing about being sidelined, nothing about the circumstances that led to my decision. I scheduled a meeting with Diane for the following morning. When I walked into her office, she was on her phone. She held up one finger, making me wait while she finished a conversation about weekend plans. When she finally hung up, she looked at me expectantly. What's up, Ariana? I handed her the printed letter. I'm resigning. My last day will be 2 weeks from today. She blinked, taking the letter. What? Why? I've accepted a position at Richard Kemp Consulting. Better opportunity for me professionally and personally. She scanned the letter, her expression shifting from confusion to alarm. This is very sudden. Is this about the Carmichael project? Because I told you we value your input on that. My decision is made, I said evenly. I'll make sure everything is documented and transitioned properly. Ariana, let's talk about this. Maybe we can discuss adjustments to your role, or... My decision is final. I'll make sure the transition is professional and complete. I left her office before she could say anything else. The email from Carmichael Manufacturing arrived at Northstar 3 hours later. Helen sent me a courtesy copy. It was formally worded but clear. Pursuant to Contract Section 12, Carmichael was requesting that Ariana Wells be assigned as lead architect for their implementation project, effective immediately. The email cited specific concerns about current project leadership and referenced the timeline delays and technical miscommunications of the past 3 weeks. Diane called me that afternoon. Her voice was different now, tighter, stressed. I just got an email from Carmichael. They're requesting you specifically to lead their project. Yes, Helen mentioned she might reach out to management about that. You knew about this? Helen and I have maintained a professional relationship, yes. She's been concerned about the project direction. Ariana. Diane's voice had a pleading edge now. You can't leave in the middle of this. This is our biggest contract. If we lose Carmichael. I'm not in the middle of it, I said calmly. You removed me from the project. Kyle is leading it. I'm sure he'll manage fine. The client is specifically asking for you. Then you have a decision to make. You can assign me to lead the project for my remaining 2 weeks here, or you can explain to the client why you're unable to fulfill their contractual request. There was a long silence. You planned this. I'm accepting a better opportunity, I said. What Carmichael chooses to do is their decision. If we lose this contract because you chose to remove me from a project I spent 4 months building, despite my expertise and despite the client's preference for my involvement? Yes, Diane. These are consequences of decisions you made. She hung up. The next morning, I was called into a meeting with Diane and her supervisor, Victoria Lang, who was the VP of Operations. Victoria was sharp, direct, and didn't waste time. Ariana, we need to understand what's happening with Carmichael Manufacturing. I explained the situation clearly and factually. I'd built the client relationship during the proposal phase. The client had specifically valued my involvement. When I was removed from the project without explanation, the quality of service declined. The client was now exercising their contractual right to request specific personnel. I was leaving Northstar for another opportunity, so Northstar would need to negotiate with the client about alternative arrangements. Victoria listened without interrupting. When I finished, she turned to Diane. You removed Ariana from the project? I thought Kyle's background made him a better fit for Kyle, who's been here for 1 month. Over Ariana, who brought in the contract. Diane didn't have a good answer for that. Victoria looked at me. What would it take for you to stay? I've accepted another position. I'm leaving. What if we reassigned you to lead Carmichael, increased your salary, guaranteed you project leadership on major accounts? I appreciate the offer, but no. My decision is made. Victoria nodded slowly. She wasn't happy, but she seemed to respect the finality of it. Will you consult with us during the transition? We'll pay your hourly rate. I'll consider proposals for consulting work. You can reach me through Richard Kemp Consulting after my last day. The meeting ended. As I left, I heard Victoria's voice behind me, speaking to Diane in a tone that wasn't friendly, my office. Now. Over the next 2 weeks, several things happened. Kyle was reassigned to different projects. I resumed technical leadership of the Carmichael implementation, working directly with Helen to stabilize the project timeline. I documented everything meticulously, every design decision, every integration specification, every client commitment. I trained 2 other architects to support the work after my departure, though it was clear Northstar didn't have anyone with my depth of knowledge on this specific project. Carmichael formally notified Northstar that they would not accept any architect other than me for the implementation phase. Since I was leaving, they offered Northstar 2 options: hire me back as an external consultant at a premium rate, or allow them to contract portions of the work directly to Richard Kemp Consulting, with me leading it. Northstar chose the second option, restructuring the contract so that the technical implementation would be subcontracted to Richard Kemp Consulting while Northstar maintained the overall account relationship. It was an expensive concession on their part. They'd lose margin on the most valuable portion of the project, but it was better than losing the entire contract. Diane didn't speak to me during my last 2 weeks except when absolutely necessary. I heard through the office grapevine that Victoria had reprimanded her formally and that her judgment was now being questioned by upper management. Kyle, who was actually a decent person, apologized to me one afternoon for getting caught in the middle of this. I told him it wasn't his fault. He'd been set up to fail. On my last day, I cleaned out my desk. A few colleagues stopped by to say goodbye. One of them, an engineer named Stephanie who'd worked with me for years, hugged me and said, "You know what's amazing? You didn't yell, you didn't make a scene, you didn't trash anyone. You just left with your head high. That takes more strength than people realize." I went home that afternoon and picked up Mia from school at 3:15. She ran to the car with her backpack bouncing, full of news about a science project. We stopped for ice cream on the way home. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I had nowhere else I needed to be. That evening, after Mia was asleep, I got an email from Helen Ortega. "Ariana, I wanted to let you know that our executive team reviewed what happened with Northstar, and we've decided to bring the entire project in-house with Richard Kemp Consulting. Northstar will no longer be involved beyond the basic software licensing. We value integrity and competence, and you've demonstrated both. We're excited to work with you in your new role. Thank you for handling this with such professionalism." I forwarded the email to Richard, who called me immediately. "Do you understand what this means?" he said. "This is $1 million contract. This makes our entire year. And it's because they trust you." "I just did the work," I said. "No, you did more than that. You built something real with them. That's what matters in this business. Relationships and trust. Not office politics." 3 months into my new position at Richard Kemp Consulting, I led the Carmichael implementation exactly the way I'd originally planned it. We finished phase 1 ahead of schedule. Helen sent our team a gift basket with a note, "This is what good partnership looks like." I worked from home most days, with occasional travel to Ohio when needed. I picked up Mia every single day at 3:15. I didn't miss another ballet recital or parent-teacher conference. My workdays were still long sometimes, but they were mine to structure. Richard meant what he'd said about flexibility and family. Then, 4 months after I left Northstar, something unexpected happened. I received a call from an unknown number one Tuesday evening. I almost didn't answer. Mia and I were halfway through dinner, but something made me pick up. "Ariana Wells?" The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. "Yes? My name is Ian Cartwright. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Meridian Systems. Do you have a moment to talk?" Meridian Systems. I knew the name, everyone in our industry did. They were one of the largest enterprise software companies in North America, 10 times the size of Northstar, with clients across every major industry. They were the kind of company people like me admired from a distance but never imagined working for. "I have a few minutes," I said, stepping into my home office and closing the door. "I'll be direct," Ian said. "We've been watching the Carmichael manufacturing implementation. We have a partnership with Carmichael, we provide their financial systems, and Helen Ortega has been telling anyone who'll listen about the quality of work you're delivering. She specifically mentioned how you rescued a failing project and did it with remarkable integrity. That's kind of her to say. It's more than kind. It's rare. We're building a new division focused on complex systems integration, and we need someone to lead the technical architecture team. We need someone who understands both the technology and the human side of these implementations. Your name keeps coming up." My heart was beating faster. I just started at Richard Kemp Consulting. I'm happy here. I understand loyalty, and I respect it. But hear me out. This isn't just a job offer. We're talking about leading a team of 20 architects, working with Fortune 500 clients, and building something significant. The compensation package would be substantial. I'm talking 3 times what you're making now, full benefits, stock options, and genuine flexibility. We've learned that the best talent needs real work-life balance. 3 times my current salary. That number echoed in my head. "Why me specifically?" I asked. "There are plenty of experienced architects out there." "Because we don't just need experience. We need someone who builds trust with clients, who sees the bigger picture, who handles pressure with grace." The Carmichael situation told us everything we needed to know about how you operate under difficult circumstances. That's leadership. Can I think about it? Absolutely. But Ariana, there's something else you should know. We're in the process of acquiring smaller firms to build out our consulting division. Richard Kemp Consulting is on our list of potential acquisitions. The room felt suddenly smaller. What does that mean? It means one way or another, we may end up working together. I'd rather have you help us build this division from the inside than have you caught in an acquisition you didn't choose. This is a chance to shape something major. After we hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, staring at nothing. I didn't tell Richard about the call immediately. I needed to think. But 2 days later, he called me into a video meeting with unusual formality in his voice. Ariana, I need to tell you something, and I want you to hear it from me first. Meridian Systems has approached us about an acquisition. They're offering a significant premium. I'm 62 years old, and this would let me retire comfortably while ensuring the team is taken care of. I haven't made a decision yet, but I wanted you to know. So Ian had been telling the truth. When would this happen? If I agree, probably within 3 months. All current employees would be offered positions within Meridian. Your role would likely expand significantly. They're specifically interested in our talent. Specifically interested in me, you mean? Richard paused. They mentioned you by name, yes. Did they contact you directly? Ian Cartwright called me earlier this week. And? He offered me a leadership position. I haven't responded. Richard was quiet for a moment, then laughed softly. Of course he did. Ariana, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to really hear it. When I started this firm, I told myself I'd build something where good people could do excellent work without sacrificing their lives. You're exactly the kind of person I wanted to support. If Meridian can offer you something bigger, something that sets you up for the rest of your career, I won't stand in your way. Not for a second. What if I want to stay with you, regardless of what happens with Meridian? Then we'll figure it out together. But promise me you'll consider what's best for you and Mia, not what you think you owe me. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I made a list of pros and cons on actual paper. Mia saw me at the kitchen table, surrounded by notes, and asked what I was doing. Trying to make a big decision about work, I said. Is it a good decision or a bad decision? That's what I'm trying to figure out, honey. She thought about this seriously. Mom, you always tell me that the right choice is usually the one that feels a little scary but also exciting. Is this scary and exciting? Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds. Yes, I admitted. It is. Then maybe that's your answer. I called Ian Cartwright the following Monday. I have conditions, I said. I'm listening. First, if Richard decides to sell to Meridian, I want protections for his entire team. No one gets pushed out or demoted. Second, I need actual flexibility, not corporate lip service. That means remote work stays remote, and school pickup is non-negotiable. Third, I want decision-making authority over technical architecture without layers of bureaucratic approval. And fourth, I want it in writing that my compensation and title aren't subject to adjustment based on gender or parental status. Ian didn't hesitate. Done. Send me the details in writing, and I'll have contracts drafted. Ariana, I want to be clear about something. We're not hiring you despite your boundaries. We're hiring you because you have the competence and self-respect to set them. That's exactly the kind of leadership we need. The acquisition moved forward. Richard negotiated an excellent deal that secured his retirement and protected his team. Most of us transitioned to Meridian, with expanded roles and better resources. But here's where the story took a turn I never anticipated. During my first week at Meridian, I was sitting in on executive planning meetings, getting oriented to the company's structure and key relationships. Ian was walking me through their client portfolio when a name caught my attention. Wait, I said. Northstar Technologies is a client? Small account, Ian said. They license some of our infrastructure components. Why? That's my former employer. Ian's eyebrows went up. The company you left before joining Richard's firm? The one where you were sidelined from the Carmichael project? The same. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. How do you feel about that? I don't know yet. It's just unexpected. 3 weeks later, unexpected became complicated. Northstar was struggling. Their revenue had dropped 15% since losing the Carmichael contract. Several other clients had left, apparently unhappy with service quality. Victoria Lang, the VP who had tried to keep me, had left for a competitor. The company was cutting costs and restructuring. And Diane Fletcher had been promoted. I learned this from an email Ian forwarded to me. Diane was now Vice President of Client Services at Northstar, and she'd reached out to Meridian asking for a meeting to discuss expanding our strategic partnership. She wanted to pitch Northstar as a preferred implementation partner for Meridian's smaller clients. Ian called me after sending the email. I'm guessing you have thoughts about this. Many thoughts, I said carefully. The truth is, we don't need Northstar as a partner. We have better options. But before I decline the meeting, I wanted to check with you. Is there any scenario where you'd want to be involved in this conversation? I sat with that question for a long moment. The old Ariana, the one who avoided conflict, who tried to smooth things over, would have said no, would have stayed far away from anything involving Diane. But I wasn't that Ariana anymore. Actually, I said slowly, I think I'd like to take that meeting. With you, if you're willing. This should be interesting. The meeting was set for the following Thursday in one of Meridian's downtown conference rooms. Diane arrived with a colleague, Oliver, their newly appointed business development director, nervous, overprepared, and clearly eager to impress. Diane looked exactly as she always had, polished, confident, carrying a leather portfolio like armor. Then she walked in and saw me sitting beside Ian. For a fraction of a second, her composure cracked. The color drained from her face before the executive mask slid back into place. Ariana, she said. I didn't realize you were at Meridian. I lead the technical architecture division, I replied evenly. Ian thought my perspective would be useful. She launched into the pitch, Northstar's track record, experience, pricing. Oliver added statistics that mostly revealed how much ground they'd lost. Ian listened, then turned to me. Ariana, based on your experience there, how would you assess Northstar's suitability for complex implementations? He handed me the room. I could have been cruel. Instead, I was precise. Northstar has capable engineers, I said. The limitations were never technical. They were managerial, specifically around judgment, talent utilization, and long-term client trust. Diane stiffened. She understood. Ian nodded. That aligns with what we're seeing. Meridian needs partners with not just skill, but sound judgment and relationship discipline. I don't believe Northstar is there right now. She tried to push back. I stopped her gently. This isn't personal. It's professional. Decisions have consequences. Ian stood, ending the meeting. After they left, he said, you could have destroyed her. That wouldn't have been professional. That's why you're here, and she isn't. Diane left Northstar 4 months later. Kyle stayed and did well. He never was the problem. One Saturday, my daughter asked if I was happier now. When I said yes, she told me I'd been sad before. Children notice. What happened wasn't about a project. It was about respect, about understanding that expertise, relationships, and boundaries matter. Diane confused availability with competence and flexibility with value. I didn't walk away to punish anyone. I walked toward integrity, toward work that respected both my skills and my life. That's the lesson, your expertise has value. Your boundaries deserve respect. And sometimes the most powerful move isn't confrontation, it's choosing better. That isn't revenge. It's justice.